Emma visits Gio at the Metro Court pool and wishes him a happy 4th of July. He needs the distraction to keep his thoughts off Sunny, so he didn't ask for the night off when she asked if he had it. How Sunny can be the man he knows and the one Tracy forewarned him about is beyond him. People can be more than one thing, according to Emma. Emma advises him to ask someone who knows Sunny since he wants to know who he is. Vaughn and Joss make a plan. Carly discovers Joss using her laptop to conduct research, which she claims is for Professor Dalton. Carly observes that she hasn't been around much recently. Since the fire, Joss has been reminded of how fleeting life can be, and she apologizes for being so busy. Carly claims that although their family has experienced a lot, they are currently safe, content, and in good health. Joss remembers their kiss as she sees Vaughn arrive. Carly says she can chat to him and she'll stay here all night after noticing that she's staring at him. Joss and Vaughn pretend to fight. Joss talks to Vaughn, and they both agree that they got off course and that the kiss from last night never happened. They talk about Joss' scheme to use her animal rights organization to persuade Vaughn to approach Emma. He asks what will agitate Emma and finds that he requires more than a simple love of animals to connect with her. Vaughn asks why Emma despises Joss, and she responds, "Me." Joss claims that she believes she is a brat, spoilt and affluent. Joss pretends to fight to gain Emma's attention when she spots her across the pool. They simply don't work together. So Joss calls Vaughn a janitor and ends their relationship. Emma smirks as she storms away. Vaughn is approached by Emma, who apologizes for the incident and informs him that he has just met the genuine Joss. He brings up the subject of animals during their conversation, informing her about the school animal rights organization. He says he would love to get involved after Emma admits she started it. To get drinks and continue their conversation, they go to the bar. Carly answers Joe's questions. Gio asks Carly to speak about Sunny. Uncertain whether she is mistaken or whether he is blind, he tells her what Tracy told him. As they sit down, Carly explains to him that Sunny loves his family despite having a difficult upbringing and having done things of which he is not proud. Carly acknowledges that although he has seen that aspect of him, he has another side. She claims that despite allowing Sunny into their lives, Michael and Dante have struggled with the same issues about him. Gio feels that if he has further questions, he'll ask his son. Was it an accident that Natalia died? Anna demands answers regarding Sidwell's role in Natalia's death, so she pays him a visit at Windmere. He declares that he would never have anything to do with his son's mother's passing. Maybe she should examine Sunny because Natalia was his loose end, and Sidwell claims he was here signing contracts with Alexis when he heard about Natalia. He informs her that Natalia knew about Sunny's heart issue, and that maybe she betrayed his confidence. Anna leaves after declaring that she doesn't trust him. To obtain Natalia's autopsy report, Anna travels to the hospital. Marco approaches her and inquires about his mother's demise. Sunny and Laura talk about the violence in Port Charles in the PCPD interrogation room. Sunny tries to persuade her to put some distance between them, but she refuses, even though he has a solution to limit the harm for her. Ezra enters while they are hugging and laughing, nagging them about their friendship while photographing them on his phone. Since it is against the law to film in an interrogation room, Laura and the officer she flagged down make Ezra remove his footage. She tells him that he's fortunate not to be arrested and tells him to leave her sight. When Anna shows there later, she tells Sunny and Laura that Natalia's death was caused by a deadly mix of alcohol and narcotics. It wasn't murder, whether if it was an accident or deliberate. Is Sasha correct to be concerned? Cody checks on Sasha and Daisy in the living room of the Q estate and mentions how terrified she was on the day of Daisy's christening. She believes she simply had baby brain, and the modifications have completely changed her. Cody goes to the kitchen to grab some beers to take down to the boathouse for the fireworks after wishing Daisy a happy first 4th of July. Brooklyn asks Michael how the children are doing, while they are setting up a picnic table at the boathouse. Michael shares with her what happened with Willow at the Metro Court pool. Brooklyn starts ranting about what Lulu did to her and Gio after expressing shock that Willow would use a child as a weapon. She acknowledges that she nearly descended to Lulu's level and pursued her via Rocco, but she was unable to do so without endangering a child. Michael tells her that he's proud of her and that she made the correct decision. He's nothing like Willow and Drew, she claims, and she's nothing like Lulu. When he gets back to the mansion, Michael sees Sasha setting Daisy down and telling her how wonderful she is with her. Sasha brings her to Michael and offers to let him put her in her sleeping gown. According to Sasha, they work well together, which gives her hope that they could succeed as co-parents. They leave her in her cot and bid her good night. Brooklyn is still setting up when Cody gets to the boathouse. They blame each other for their falling out and haven't spoken in weeks. According to Brooklyn, he has no right to be upset with her because it was her secret that was revealed. He reminds her that she forced him to hide something from his best friend Dante. They get together and discuss their issues. He acknowledges that he simply believes she ended her pregnancy, and Brooklyn apologizes for never notifying him. She assures him that their friendship and her level of concern for him are not demonstrated by her refusal to tell him the truth. He clarifies that he didn't want Dante to know the truth about his father, which he had been unaware of for the majority of his life. They embrace and forgive each other. Who is the mother of Rocco? At home, Rocco asks his mother if Britt is his biological mother and if she gave birth to him. When Dante shows up after Lulu contacts him for assistance, he finds out that Rocco has inquiries concerning Britt. Rocco wonders if Britt gave birth to him after telling them he discovered 2 birth certificates. He is genetically theirs even if they claim she did. They had intended to inform him when he was older, but Dante acknowledges that he postponed it when his mother went into a coma. After waking up, Lulu claims that a lot happened. She had a lot to get used to, and amid the confusion, the truth was obscured. Rocco believes that what they are about to tell him makes a difference, but Lulu clarifies that it doesn't. He points out that this is similar to Gio and Brooklyn, but Lulu argues it's not, and they always meant to let him know. Dante claims that they will respond to all of his inquiries. They inform him about in vitro and surrogacy, explaining that they intended to utilize Maxie to carry him, but that plans were shelved due to complications. Britt then had their embryo implanted after stealing it. Rocco sobs that they didn't want him and muses that he might not have been born if Britt hadn't snatched him. He was 7 months old when they found out, and Lulu assures him it is untrue. Although they deny it, Rocco believes they are stuck with him. When they returned to the doctor to conceive, they discovered that an embryo was missing. According to Lulu, they love and desired him. Rocco wishes that file had never been discovered by Danny. Lulu queries, "Which file?" Danny discovered the file containing the birth certificates among a pile of Brooklyn's deception materials. Rocco informs them. Rocco decides to go think in his room and claims it would take him some time to comprehend everything. He claims he wishes he had heard it from them, but he's not angry. Lulu informs Dante that she has a task to complete while she is by herself. Lulu shouts that Brooklyn won't get away with this, despite Dante's pleas for her to refrain. Sasha, Michael, Brooklyn, and Cody gather at the Q's boathouse to watch the fireworks. Cody revealed to Mac that he was his son a year ago. According to Michael, his marriage started to fall apart a year ago. Brooklyn expects to speak with Gio once again by the following year. Overhead, the fireworks start to burst. In the latter moments of the show, Sasha hears Daisy sobbing in the boathouse, likely from the fireworks, and slips over to see how she's doing. Everyone is watching the fireworks at the pool when Joss gets back and finds Emma cuddling up to Vaughn. Carly gives Gio a smile. When Sasha enters the Q's nursery, she discovers Daisy is gone. Ezra tells Sonny at the PCPD that he must be glad he gets off free once more, pointing out that Anna might have made up the overdose. Sonny is told to leave by Anna. They stop to watch the fireworks as Laura leads him out. When Marco arrives in Windmere, Sidwell watches the fireworks. Since the autopsy revealed that his mother died from an overdose, he is furious that Corinthos is now free. They won't, Sidwell informs his son, even though Anna could have forgotten about the issue. Dante and Rocco sit on the veranda of Lulu's and watch the fireworks. Dante responds that Mom is running an errand when Rocco asks where she is. Although Dante claims that no one is upset with Danny, he fears that Danny is in trouble. Since there are no more drinks available at the boathouse, Michael and Cody go up to the house for a beer run. When Lulu shows up, she accuses Brooklyn of being a nasty bitch, and declares that it is unacceptable for her to harm her son. Then she gives Brooklyn a slap. Brooklyn labels Lulu a hypocrite for having double standards on the next episode of General Hospital. This time it went too far. Christina tells her mother after Cody tells Ava, "I'm all yours." And I thought the evening couldn't get any better. Sidwell tells Marco. In so doing, she sealed her fate. Rocco wants Jason to share all he knows about Britt with him. Rick finds Liz with Portia by the pool. Michael hears a distraught Sasha sob. Our daughter was stolen. Drew Kane may surreptitiously record Curtis Ashford bribing Jacinda. According to General Hospital spoilers. Will Drew gain the advantage as a result of Kai Taylor's tip? GH viewers are aware that Kai prioritized his commitment to Drew over his allegiance to Trina Robinson. Kai laid the foundation for more conflict by blabbering to Drew about Curtis-Jacinda plot, rather than defending Trina's family. In order to entice Jacinda to assist with his scheme, Curtis hopes Felicia Scorpio can track her down. Jacinda is supposed to pretend that Drew paid her for their passionate evening, and that he took the medications voluntarily. However, now that Kai has been talking to Drew, Curtis' plan appears to be about to go apart. Even though he doesn't have all the information, Drew is knowledgeable enough to build a trap, and maybe put Curtis in danger. Drew might use devious tactics if Felicia returns Jacinda to Port Charles and grants Curtis the important meeting he desires. It's simple to think that Drew, possibly with Kai's assistance, would plant a recording device. In any case, Drew might surreptitiously capture Curtis and Jacinda's intimate chat. Maybe Drew could find evidence that Curtis offered to pay Jacinda to tell this false story, and if she agrees, he might find evidence that Jacinda agreed. Drew is likely to obtain significant advantage against an adversary during the week of July 7th to 11th. That can entail getting a significant edge over Curtis and intensifying the ongoing conflict. In any event, it appears that Drew will manage to maintain control in this situation. Trina will be furious when she learns of Kai's treachery, because his tip will work against Curtis and favor Drew. Despite Kai's defense of his behavior, Trina will lose it and question whether Drew will always be his first priority. According to General Hospital spoilers, Kai and Trina's relationship is about to take a turn for the worse, so keep an eye out. Alright, let's get on to the main topic. Sitting on the edge of her bed, Lulu clenched her quivering fingers together in her lap. Her stomach had been in knots since the early hours of the morning, and the weight of the revelation from the night before was still oppressive. The hardest thing she had done since emerging from her coma had been telling Rocco the truth. She would never forget the way his innocent eyes glowed with treachery and confusion. He hadn't let out a cry. He hadn't shed a tear. He had simply stood there dumb and silent, as though the ground had moved beneath him and he had lost his sense of how to stand. She had stupidly believed that he might not be old enough to completely understand the complexities of the truth. However, Rocco was more intelligent than other boys his age. She wasn't prepared for the questions he asked. What kept you from waking up and returning? How come my father didn't tell me everything? Brooklyn pretended, but why? Lulu merely apologized and made halting attempts to explain years of dysfunction in the family. She had no simple solutions. However, the expression in his eyes was not one of rage. It was more profound. A breach of trust. More than anything else, that stung. Now, standing and gazing out her bedroom window, she struggled to control her breathing. The calm streets below were bathed in a golden color as the Port Charles morning sun slowly rose. Her world was on fire, but everything else appeared to be calm. Brooklyn had gone too far. Lulu could justify a lot of things, including rivalry, past events, and even treachery. But it was unacceptable to lie to Rocco about his own mother's coma. It was hard enough for Lulu to accept that Brooklyn had taken on a motherly role while she was away, but now she recognized it for what it really was. An invasion. An act of manipulation. A deliberate decision to maintain Rocco's emotional attachment to her. Lulu didn't hold out for quiet or coffee. With anger and sadness tight in her chest, she snatched up her keys and ran out of the home. The streets were too slow for her urgency, and the ride to the Quartermain estate was a blur. Her hands were white with clenching around the driving wheel by the time she got there. Lulu rushed in the front door while Brooklyn was in the foyer. She was in the middle of a sentence when Olivia noticed the tension and moved aside to give them room. When Brooklyn saw Lulu's gaze, her face became cold. Lulu growled, "You told my son I wasn't coming back." Brooklyn came forward, attempting to remain calm, and said, "You lied to him." "I told the truth. I expressed to him what we all thought." Lulu's voice trailed off, but the quiet rage was much more dangerous. "That you might never wake up." You advised him that it would be best for me to stay behind. I hope he forgets about me. Brooklyn's shields were primed, but they broke under Lulu's ferocity. You took my son, Brooklyn. When no one else was able to raise him, I did. Someone was needed by him. While Dante was absorbed in his own universe, there was a piercing crack that reverberated throughout the mansion. The younger woman stumbled back a step in horrified stillness as Lulu's palm made contact with her face. Her eyes filled with tears, not from pain but from the emotional blow, and her cheek turned scarlet. Lulu spit out, "You don't get to play the martyr. You are not allowed to behave in such a wonderful manner. You informed him that I had left." Brooklyn bit back her tears and swallowed. "You led him to believe that loving me would only cause him suffering." Lulu yelled. "You were trying to replace me and I was trying to protect him." The ensuing stillness was oppressive. "You can lie to yourself all you want, but you can't lie to me." The two women did not move. Before, their history had been tumultuous, but now it felt unchangeable. Brooklyn trembled as Lulu turned and stormed away without saying another word. Sasha had reached Brando's memorial garden across town, a tranquil retreat she frequently used to gather her thoughts. However, something didn't feel right today. The flowers in the vase by Brando's plaque were toppled, and the wind was rustling the trees a bit more forcefully. As she knelt down to adjust them, she saw something that made her stomach turn over. A tiny bracelet with tiny daisies that she knew right away. Daisy's wristband. Sasha got up fast and looked around. Her heart started pounding. Daisy has worn her bracelet all her life. One of the few things Sasha really treasured was a present from her. Her hands were shaking when she called Daisy's number. No response. Once more. Voicemail. Daisy was staying at a halfway home, which she called. Daisy hadn't come back from her walk the previous evening, the receptionist said in an evasive manner. Nobody gave it much thought. She was a calm girl who frequently spent hours outside reflecting. Sasha, however, was wiser. Daisy didn't simply vanish. Not in this manner. She drove directly to the police station, and by the time she entered the main doors, her breath was ragged and irregular. With concern on his face, Dante moved to her side as soon as he noticed her. "Sasha." "It's Daisy," she gasped. "She is no longer there. At Brando's memorial, I also discovered her jewelry." Dante started to move. "She wouldn't just leave it." "All right. Let's be serious about this. We'll send out a missing persons alert." Sasha continued. "She was afraid lately. She said that someone from her past was observing her. I didn't press her for information. I ought to have." Dante's eyes grew stony. "We'll find her." Brooklyn sat by herself in the conservatory of the Quartermain home, gazing at the grand piano that had served as her haven since she was a young girl. The sensation from Lulu's slap was still present on her face. However, the guilt was far worse than the sting. She had gone too far. Perhaps out of fear rather than cruelty. Fear that if Rocco continued to hold out hope for something that might never materialize, he would collapse. Perhaps they also worry that there won't be any space left for Lulu once she returns. She looked up when she heard a faint knock. Chase was the one. He whispered softly, "I heard," and sat down next to her. How awful was it? Brooklyn didn't give him a look. She gave me a slap. Chase touched her hand and said, "I deserved it. She is in pain. However, you are as well. I didn't intend to harm Rocco. I believed I was acting appropriately." "Perhaps you were for a time," Chase answered cautiously. Brooklyn nodded, her eyes glassy. "But now everything's changed. I could have lost him. Not only Lulu. Rocco. Forever." Meanwhile, Lulu had returned home, her heart racing with pride and remorse. She had defended herself. For her son. However, the vision of Brooklyn's shocked and injured face would not leave her. After pouring herself a glass of water, she took a seat. There was an intolerable hush in her home. It was everything like an echo. She reached for her phone to see how Rocco was doing, but she put it down. He required room. Both of them did. Her phone then rang. Sasha was the one. Lulu blinked and said, "Daisy's missing." "What?" "When I visited Brando, I discovered her jewelry. She is no longer there. Dante is investigating." Lulu felt sick to her stomach. "You don't believe?" Sasha's voice broke as she added, "I don't know." She said that someone was observing her. I ought to have done more. I have no idea where she is now. Lulu stood. I'll be there. The situation at the police station rapidly deteriorated. You shouldn't face this alone. A few suspect cars were parked close by during the hours Daisy was last seen. According to the traffic cam footage, Dante and the investigators started looking at near the garden. One caught their attention. A black SUV without a visible license plate. With her arms encircling her head, Sasha sat in the room's corner, her thoughts racing. She continued to play back their previous exchange. Daisy had appeared preoccupied, her hands fluttering and her gaze darting about the room every few seconds. Have you ever had the impression that ghosts don't want to die? Daisy had inquired. She was tormented by that mysterious question now. The search went on as night fell over Port Charles. In the shadowier areas of the city, where Daisy occasionally wandered when her thoughts were too loud, Lulu and Sasha strolled alongside each other. They called every common friend they could think of, questioned store owners, and inquired at homeless shelters. They paused to relax by the docks at one point. Stress tightened Lulu's face as she gazed out across the ocean. She said, "It's unbelievable how quickly things fall apart." Sasha nodded, saying, "One minute I'm trying to take back my life, and the next I'm in a storm I never saw coming. That is the effect of trauma. It waits. Keep quiet. Then it leaps." They sat silently for a while the waves brushed the dock's edge. Lulu spoke again at last. Sasha nodded, but there was uncertainty in her eyes. "We'll find her." Back at the Quartermain mansion, Brooklyn paced her chamber, unable to fall asleep, saying, "I just hope we're not already too late." She felt guilty, but something else also bothered her. Something she kept to herself. Daisy had stopped over a few days ago, unexpectedly and for a short while. She stayed outside. She waited for Brooklyn to emerge from the hedges. At the moment, Brooklyn was unsure of what Daisy meant when she stated, "You should tell her the whole truth before someone else does." Her skin crawled now. Did none of them realize how much Daisy was in danger? Was there a larger connection here? The phone was picked up by Brooklyn. She phoned Dante, her hands shaking. She remarked, "I believe I know someone else Daisy spoke to before she vanished. But I need to speak with you face to face." A camera glowed inside a dark, deserted building in the distance, beyond the city lights. A live stream from an underground room was shown on a monitor that hummed quietly. Daisy lay curled and terrified on the floor, alive but obviously not safe. And the dark figure in the corner observing her? Kai has always been a background figure who watched and calculated without making a big impression. He was aware of little seemingly unimportant things that frequently grew into larger ones. This time it was just a casual remark, a minor change in conduct, or a phone conversation that most people wouldn't even recall. However, Kai recalled. Until it mattered, he filed it away. And as it happened, that was quite important. Since Jason returned and started asking questions that caused the walls to close in a bit more every day, Drew had been tense for days. However, Drew had to cope with more than simply Jason. He had too many secrets to handle, including those involving Aurora, Sunny, and now Curtis. Another scandal was the last thing he needed. Yet Kai's tip had the potential to turn into just that. It all began with Jacinda, a reserved, methodical employee of City Hall with connections to public finance committees and zoning boards. Curtis had just begun to visit her a bit too frequently for it to go unnoticed, but she was effective despite her lack of flair. Kai brought it up casually, half expecting Drew to dismiss it, but instead, his eyes widened with unexpected curiosity. "Jacinda?" As if he had already heard of the name, Drew had inquired. The moment Kai nodded briefly, Drew realized he needed to learn the truth. He started off cautiously, gathering information in silence, like he always did. However, it became more suspicious the further he dug. Curtis worked on a project that needed significant city approvals. Conveniently, Jacinda was the one who approved everything. It was meant to be ordinary. However, it was no longer usual when Kai witnessed Curtis deliver Jacinda a sealed package outside of Metro Court. He watched as she hurriedly slipped it into her purse and turned away. A bribe was given. At first, Drew didn't want to believe it. Curtis should have been following the rules. He had put forth a lot of effort to organize his life and create something better. However, even decent guys made mistakes from time to time, particularly when they were forced into unavoidable corners. Drew concluded that he couldn't go straight to Curtis. He would ruin a friendship if he were mistaken. Confronting him would just cause Curtis to hide the evidence further if he was correct. Thus, Drew took the necessary action. He trailed behind Curtis. Observing from a distance, he placed a covert recording device in a pen and placed it in Curtis's coat pocket when they gathered at the gym for another meeting with Jacinda. It was a huge risk. The harm would be irreparable if Curtis found out. But there was nothing left for Drew. That evening, Drew listened to Curtis and Jacinda's conversation unfold in crackling audio, while sitting in his office with the lights down and headphones on. The start was informal, even amiable. Curtis's tone then changed. Drew heard the little rustle of an envelope being slid over a surface as Curtis added, "You know what this is?" "I do," Jacinda said thoughtfully. "But this isn't enough." Drew only needed to hear that one sentence. It was a pattern rather than an isolated incident. Jacinda was negotiating her own price since the stakes were so high. With the realization of what he had just verified weighing heavily on him, Drew reclined in his chair. Curtis was with him. However, what on earth was he meant to do with that? At first, Drew kept the video to himself because he was torn between justice and loyalty. He kept it from Kai. He kept it from Jason. Not even Carly, and they had been gradually re-establishing some semblance of understanding recently. Carly, however, sensed a problem. She could always. She leaned in and asked, "What are you sitting on, Drew?" One morning when they were seated across from one another at Kelly's. "I see it in your eyes. You've discovered something." Drew paused, giving a small shake of his head. "Carly, it's not your burden." "Maybe not," she said. "But whether you tell me or not, it's going to blow up. And if Curtis is involved..." She interrupted herself. Between them hung the implication. When Jason began sniffing around the same offer, the dispute only got worse. He had heard rumors that city contracts were being rubber-stamped too soon. Getting engaged in civic corruption scandals wasn't Jason's style, but Sonny had recently voiced concern that Curtis's nightclub expansion, which was deliberately situated close to Corinthos front businesses, might cause issues. Jason had instincts but no evidence. Additionally, Drew was already burning his hands on the same fire that those instincts were circling. Jason came up to Drew in a quiet, blunt manner that only Jason could. "I am aware that you are observing Curtis. You possess something." At first, Drew remained silent. "Don't lie to me." Both guys were struggling with the weight of quiet as they stood on the pier, the wind tearing through the ocean. At last, Drew whispered, "What would you do with it if I did?" Jason responded, "It depends on what it is." Drew let out a sigh. "That's the reality. It's bad. Then you can't sit on it forever." However, making it public would damage Curtis's brand, his company, and perhaps land him in jail. Perhaps there was more to the story, Drew attempted to tell himself. Curtis might have been the victim of blackmail. Perhaps Jacinda was engaging in her own game. Drew therefore took a risk and met with Jacinda face to face. Under a new guise, he asked to meet with her, and explained that he was interested in investing in a waterfront project. She consented to meet him at a coffee shop in the downtown area. She appeared anxious. The first hint was that Drew kept a tight eye on her during their talk, casually bringing up Curtis's name to see how she would respond. For a moment her eyes flinched. Then he continued to shove. "Do you ever fear that these brief conversations could be recorded?" he inquired. Jacinda blinked, paused for a second, then gave an overly forced laugh. "Who would act in such way?" Drew gave a small smile. "You'd be surprised." He had confirmation when he left, but no additional proof. Jacinda knew Curtis was exposed and that she was concealing something. Drew thought about giving the police the proof. He also thought about leaving it to Jason. Drew didn't want to ruin Curtis, but then he recalled something Sam had said in one of their more candid exchanges years ago. Justice without compassion can still destroy the wrong people. If he had to, he wanted to save him from himself. Instead of meeting Curtis at the Savoy, he set up a private rendezvous at a more sedate location, a little park close to the harbor where they used to run when they were younger and had less to lose. Curtis arrived late, a little less confident than usual. Drew wasted no time. "I am aware of Jacinda," Drew stated bluntly. Curtis tensed. "And I know about the money." What are you discussing? Curtis, I have the conversation.